The Toronto-based Ontario College of Art and Design, the university, so it is OCAD University, is Canada's University of the Imagination. OCAD University has enunciated engagement with the continual emergence of a creative city as one of its strategic priorities. As a specialized art, design, and media institution, we have developed a series of tools for imagining our contradictory and overlapping urban future that engage the drivers of change and the city's invisible forces and networks. Each of these tools is enhanced by the doubling qualities of the digital era, the so, lo, co, social, local, and collaborative. Strategic foresight helps us to spot trends, paint scenarios, and imagine futures with an emphasis on technological impacts. And collaborative methods place art and design at the very center, the epicenter of the formation of new problem-solving research coalitions in a highly transdisciplinary networked global world. The art of reciprocal public-private alliances brings shared, sustainable built spaces into being that are virtually linked. Inclusive design allows us to engineer and facilitate a culturally diverse and deeply accessible physical and online city. Visual analytics provide deep veins that probe and reveal the city's data streams. And mobility, enabled by devices and networks, excites and directs the city's pathways and opportunities. Curatorial practice and environmental design act as agents, allowing wide-scale physical virtual encounters and cultural interventions, constructing meaning from noise. Indigenous history and presence meet strategic foresight with the celebration and rootedness of 7 generations. From these layers, partnerships, and processes, a new city of and for the imagination will emerge. I should mention, by the way, that my Twitter handle is not Sarah Diamond, it's Code Zebra, should you want to tweet. So, why is it the age of imagination? Our ability to solve problems creatively and to move from ideas to actualization is the most valuable resource that we have as a nation and global society. As cultural agents, we traffic in disciplined imagination. Strategic foresight derives from the American military, the work of Herman Kahn and the Rand Institute in the 1940s, which migrated in the 1960s into business planning, in particular Shell and General Electric. In this century, techniques are reshaped through design thinking into a set of brainstorming and storytelling planning tools. Laura Anna Constanzo and Robert Bradley McKay, in the Handbook of Research on Strategic Foresight, define foresight as being less about prediction and extrapolation of existing trends and more about preparation, understanding the, quote, difficult to quantify, dynamic properties of any complex set of circumstances, particularly where social systems and markets are concerned. The power is the ability to forecast possible worlds, or, quote, modes of reasoning, unquote, in the face of the, quote, radically open future, unquote, a term coined by David Siddell and Dominique van Aken. Foresighting draws from complexity science, which processes multiple patterns, sifting these down to the accurate and significant, as Bill McKelvey and Max Boisset suggest. The Ontario College of Art and Design's University Strategic Foresight Lab has a methodology that brings together systems and design thinking, foresight, and intensive engagement with contemporary technology in the digital age, and scenario building. We have used this method to consider, amongst other challenges, the future of art and design. Signals, weak and strong, emerge as well as trends, so patterns within signals, then drivers, which are the forces behind the signals, uncertainties, which are the drivers that are less known and hence most disruptive. And we build and name scenarios, which is where creative people truly engage. We link this practice with sketching, both digital and physical, and then we draw out the implications for action. So I want to just quickly note some of the trends that we defined, and we can see that these are highly contradictory. So this is our list. Singular to multiple, passive to participatory, and we see these sorts of tensions and stretches in the ways that audiences and consumers and inventors of culture coincide within the very same personality. Competitive to collaborative, and in fact, the word on the street in the 21st century is co-opetition. How can we work together to advance our needs, our causes, our collaborations at the same time as we recognize that it's a highly competitive world? Public and private to shared wealth, so even corporate social responsibility, which we've seen emerge in the last 5 years as a fantastically dynamic force of support for the arts, is this kind of stretch between the intensification of capitalism on one side and then this recognition of the need and demand by consumers for shared value. Opaque to transparent, and this is certainly something that all of our institutions face as we look at disclosing and opening our data and our processes to generations who are absolutely transparent with their own information on the internet. And then the physical to virtual, which I don't need to say more about because this very conference is about this. Advantage to less influence. So we've seen the shift in global power, and then the profligate to frugal, and one can argue that there's extremes of intensified wealth and increasing poverty in the world that we live in. And then the birthright to unavailable, so both because of issues of sustainability and because, again, shifts in global power, we've seen tremendous changes in what we have assumed to be our birthright, often in the West. And then attentive to distracted, so the impact of technologies on generations, many generations who pay as much attention to their mobile devices as to any physical environment. So interesting, trends result in demands that offer opportunities. In this instance, ones that the cultural sector is ideally capable of meeting. Expression, experience, integration, in the face of fragmentation and low attention, inclusion and exchange. For example, the quality of experience and engagement that donors now demand. In looking at the driving forces and critical uncertainties, we can see that some of these are givens, albeit disruptive. Others are less expected and hence less easy to control. Drivers of change in this period include economic restructuring, the shifts in cultural values, civic instabilities, institutional disintegration, so the kind of disintermediating impacts of technology, for example, resource availability, the rise of global powers and their shifts, technological connection, and demographic changes, aging, diversity, and migration. We chose 3 drivers that we felt were the most disruptive for culture, which we can extrapolate with relevance for creative cities. These were economic restructuring, from gradual and stable to unstable and disruptive, cultural values, from responsive and instrumental to critical, intrinsic, and challenging, and global perspectives, from protectionist, inward and localized, to global and outward. We placed them on a 3-dimensional grid and positioned 4 scenarios. We already acknowledge the relentless power of technological connection and change, as well as shifting demographics. Upheavals in global power and resource availability. So it is not that these are unimportant, but they are inevitable in their forward march. And we created scenarios in order to understand the key uncertainties affecting art and design. Each scenario has a story on which strategy can then hang. So Legacy Island is an inward-directed world dominated by local and regional values. And in reaction to economic and other challenges, industries and organizations embrace the familiar, and DIY formulas, on the other hand, begin to meld the virtual and digital together. In Payback, quid pro quo and measurables are everything in a highly risk-averse world where everyone strives for more but makes do with much, much less. On the other hand, resistant cultures rise as a very powerful counter in this world. In Commercial World, It is a world in which performance and value is equated with sales volumes and the numbers of impressions. Unceasing pursuit of attention, status, and influence permeates dominant culture and drives the majority of creative initiatives. And in Globeland, we have an environment of optimistic, outward-looking possibilities and interdisciplinary, even transdisciplinary ambition. And the catchphrase of Globeland is, big problems, bold solutions. So we looked for common threads within the scenarios. We saw art and design as cross-cutting in a future filled with tension between the local and global, wealth and restraint, highly applied and abstract values. It was clear that whatever the future might bring, culture cannot stay confined to its traditional boundaries. And I guess that is my underlying message today. Our analysis suggests a positioning for OCAD University as an institution that is able to respond to these changes, engaged in transformative education, in scholarship and innovation. We make contributions to fields of art, design, and media, and we blend together the local, indigenous, and global in cultural initiatives. And we look to provide knowledge and invention across a wide range of disciplines to solve the world's grand challenges. I extrapolated the demands that we see in this era and created a manifesto for the creative city of the future. It provides networked, inclusive, reciprocal, and interdependent experiences. It is a testbed for new forms of exchange economies. It is the site of knowledge integration. It serves as a startup, whether for profit or social innovation. It offers publicly facing institutions and data, and there are multiple conveners and curators of expression. It is relentlessly diverse and generationally inclusive, and it is accessible. It offers a ubiquitous mobile grid. In providing examples, I want to speak to the demands and the kinds of tools that I think are needed. So, collaborative and transdisciplinary models for knowledge, which we saw in Globeland, and the demand for integration. So I imagine a future city in which the arts and the sciences are deeply and irrevocably intertwined. There are many historical precedents, whether the Islamic Golden Age or European Renaissance, and more recently, since the 1960s, art, science, and technology innovations, I think, of which you will hear in the panel that follows. The differences and parallels between art and science can provide vitality to art, and when I say art, I mean to culture, as well as to culture and design, pedagogy, and research. And there are many sciences, the various fields of theoretical physics, biology, psychology, genetics, for example, that offer theory, methods, and materials to culture. And on the other side of the divide, we see new technologies that offer scientists the freedom to use their imaginations, particularly in the realms of bioscience, biotechnology, nanotechnology, and computer science, opening their minds to the views of designers and cultural creators. And activist engagement with the sciences, including medicine, earth science, physics, and material science, as well as social science, provides relevancy and cogency to cultural practices, as well as tools to understand the impacts of culture. John Maeda, the former head of MIT Media Lab and collegial president of the Rhode Island School of Design, has framed this transformation as, quote, STEM to STEAM, unquote, an initiative to add art and design to the national agenda of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, education and research and practice in America. STEM plus art equals STEAM. And the goal is to foster the true innovation that comes with combining the mind of a scientist or technologist with that of the artist or designer. Cities are the engines for a new world of ethical art and science collaboration. And collaborative methods and coalitions are the way of not only the future, but should be of the present. Cultural planning needs to step outside of the box of traditional culture and cultural institutions, seeking new allies and new avenues. OCAD University and Brain and Gerontology Institute, Baycrest, are forming a Culture and Cognition Institute that will blend neuroscience, art, and design, providing a holistic approach to aging that also uses evidence-based testing of impacts. The Memory Link project provides users with a mobile memory scaffold that act as reminder systems for the aged or individuals with acquired brain injury. Associate Professor Judith Doyle and Professor Martha Ladley and their students developed Warmware, using highly personal navigation systems to prompt users to their daily tasks. And Phantom House, built in Second Life, immerses researchers in an alien and uncomfortable space reminiscent of memory loss. Pathfinding adds to this theme an installation created by Doyle and her brain-injured collaborators. An environmental design project at the undergraduate level, led by Professor Cheryl Girodi, engaged 6 student teams in rethinking physical and virtual wayfinding throughout the complex environment of Baycrest. The challenge is compounded as Baycrest clientele suffer from memory difficulties, and the slides that follow represent the thinking of just one team, but we can extrapolate this project to institutional spaces across the city, and then outside of the physical boundaries of the institution into the city itself, in order to allow a rich relationship between aging populations and our young. Brain Lane is a science translation project that interprets Baycrest's cutting-edge research in memory and aging. And a team of neuroscientists communicated their research to our students, led by Professor Chung-Il Kim, who then translated these concepts into large-scale banners. These were hung in the hallways of Baycrest and later exhibited at the Textile Museum, Ontario Science Centre. So OCAD University is certainly not alone in its interest in connecting health, aging, and culture. At the recent New York City New Paradigms Conference, Alain Danseger shared his vision for the Grand Ballet Canadien de Montréal's National Centre for Dance Therapy. Part of Grand Ballet's broader vision, this initiative deploys dance to promote the health and well-being of individuals. The National Centre for Dance Therapy is the only dance company in the world offering 3 interconnected services: dance and movement therapy, clinical research, and Canada's first graduate-level dance therapy training program. And its first phase of operations involves pilot projects conducted in association with 4 university health centres from each of the major universities in Montreal. In fact, their first project links Concordia and the Institut Universitaire de Gériatrie de Montréal with a research project on dance for the elderly. The Centre pursues 3 objectives: to promote the beneficial effects of dance on the well-being of individuals, to offer new career opportunities to professional dancers in transition, and to support the work of healthcare providers. Alain describes this initiative as, quote, thinking outside the box, but not too far from the core, unquote. I thought a great way to think of our future as institutions. So design and the demand for inclusion. Inclusive design is another toolkit that OCAD University brings to the challenge of 21st century urban cultural planning. The great wealth of cities such as Toronto is diversity, and policy can enable a context where diversity thrives and finds its own expression. The challenge of inclusion and disability can be seen as the current threshold for issues of human rights. And with the advance of technology, ubiquitous network capacity and data analysis are capable of recognizing and supporting individuals in very precise ways where we can empower them no matter what their ability is. Our Inclusive Design Research Center and Inclusive Design Institute, which is a multi-institutional network, provide a community of developers, designers, researchers, advocates, and disabled persons and volunteers. And its philosophy is that accessibility and inclusion are not only rights to be protected, but catalysts for new ideas, design principles, leading to better design business strategies that make good business sense and economic drivers with ubiquitous social and cultural benefits. Numerous reports, such as Rick Miner's People Without Jobs and Jobs Without People, have identified persons with disabilities as a potential labor pool. It's been estimated that Ontario alone could realize a $4.7 billion increase in annual wages. That is an $853 increase in GDP per person by taking the steps required to provide accessibility for people with disabilities. The classic example of inclusive design is the curb cut, the result of years of lobbying by the disabled, which facilitates prams, shopping carts, and skateboards. And a recent invention, Tekla, is amazing. It's a piece of hardware that allows severely disabled individuals to use their mobile phone through their wheelchair, driving controls using Bluetooth as a gateway, and interfaces with all applications on the smartphone. Because the IDRC focuses on mobile technologies as their interface and mobility as their result, they enable disabled people to access many layers of the city that were previously unattainable. And through these efforts, one can imagine the city as as all of the existing access points for the disabled, and then extrapolate this network, radiating outwards as technology literally opens doors that once were shut. And one can imagine the giant grid of all of the cities where these technologies have been deployed to assist the disabled to navigate and participate. And this is exactly what we are trying to design. An important element of the IDRC's practice has a direct impact on creative communities, developing translational tools through action research with the disabled that allow communities to work in synesthetic media. Fluid Engage, another mobile platform, is an accessible interface that provides a cultural guide to museums, accessible on-site or in other locations. And it runs a powerful collaborative exhibition and presentation program, for example, with Workman Arts in Toronto, entitled Outside In, that features culture by people with disabilities. Without access to literacy, to education and online creative tools, disabled people will be marginalized from contributing as artists or as audience members. And in an aging population, disability for most of us at some level or another is inevitable, but addressable. I want to talk now about collaborative partnerships and real estate, the end of town and gown and the demand for exchange. The university and the city, from medieval origins to the present, explored the ways that the needs of universities and their hosts have been at odds for centuries, from clashing culture to land expropriations. But at the same time, universities have been supported and at times rescued by communities for whom they provide jobs and economic stimulus. It's a virtual circle. In the digital era, locality may become less relevant to institutions as their student base migrates outside of their immediate vicinity, and the walls of the university become increasingly porous. A strong movement to mitigate conflict, build on shared interests, emerged explicitly in the 1970s and has amplified in the last decade. Roger Kemp's Town and Gown Relations, a handbook of best practices, suggests the need for all stakeholders to be at the table when exploring university capital expansion, the benefits of service learning for students, job and economic multipliers. And in preparing for this talk, I reviewed master plans from a number of Canadian and American universities and found recent aspirational terms such as, quote, well integrated into the surrounding community, strengthen relationships, and encourage cooperation between the university and surrounds. I believe that the concept of porousness and community interdependency in building university infrastructure is a necessity and has the positive impact of offering an alternative to payback culture, wherein the public sector is no longer willing or able to pay for capital expansion, and where increasing hostility to universities as elite institutions is on the rise. Both pragmatically and philosophically, institutions require close partnerships with the private sector and new models of funding capital expansion. And part of our strategy as an institution has been to enhance our job as a cultural institution, providing excellent gallery experiences, physical and virtual, collaborative and institutional, that are deeply integrated and dispersed throughout the city. We are exploring how to enable other cultural institutions to be our partners as we plan future builds. For example, with the Art Gallery of Ontario, with whom we have a very intimate relationship. And government policy plays a critical role here. In Ontario, the Section 37 bylaw requires developers to engage in support of not-for-profits and/or area improvement when they seek additional height or density. And in turn, Section 37s mandate public-facing projects. In less than 2 years, we will open an 8,000 square foot relocation of our on-site gallery as part of the studio condominium development by Aspen Ridge Developers, which won the BILD, the Build Toronto 2012 award. And the building was designed around the Oakhead University Gallery and Cafe. And other cultural institutions, for example, a Toronto consortium of media organizations, are working very closely with the developer community. And of course, working with developers is risk-laden. The health of the real estate market drives possibilities and completion. This concept of a campus that is fully integrated with the downtown and with other not-for-profit entities is not unique to Oakhead University. The University of Winnipeg has undertaken a deeply integrated rebuild in the Portage and Main area, pulling down its walls and creating flow through, encouraging Aboriginal businesses and hiring Indigenous staff. The Buehler Center is a revitalization project for the downtown that amalgamates UW's Faculty of Business, Continuing Studies, and Global Community Center, and was built as an exciting co-venture with Plug-in Gallery. Here is some of the architectural thinking. I quote, 460 is conceived as actively participating in its environs, while also allowing the city to be brought inside. A shortcut enables pedestrians to pass through the building without actually entering. And this portal is programmed as a gallery space that will expose passerbys to the gallery's featured exhibits. A unique 4-story interior links the multiple occupants of the building in a manner that is both social and yet elusive, allowing simultaneous glimpses of goings-on in disparate parts of our space, unquote. Our next venture, here's the quote, and just some shots from inside the gallery, which is now built and quite absolutely gorgeous. Project looking at the history of Winnipeg appropriately in this new remapping of Portage and Main. And our next venture is with David Mervish and Frank Geary. We're part of a 3-story condominium redevelopment on King Street West, where we will open 25,000 square feet of the Princess of Wales Visual Arts Centre at Oakhead University, with David Mervish, who will create a 60,000 square foot gallery to house his astounding modernist collection, accessible as a teaching resource for our students and faculty and to the public. This initiative brings together, quote, Legacy Island, unquote, a world of traditional values, in this instance, classic modernism, with a resounding internationalism. It creates a zone for music, theater, visual art, and cinema along King West. And the facility for us will host a faculty gallery, curatorial gallery for our curatorial students, state-of-the-art digital facilities accessible to the public, the exhibition of our collections, our art history publication and print programs, and community engagement, with all of these through continuing studies in a high-tech, low-tech print and production art facility. We'll open a 300-person, fully networked theater in the Round that will support performance art in Toronto, as well as local and remote collaborations. And in the Princess of Wales tradition, we'll continue to work with street youth under the auspices of Sketch and with people with HIV and AIDS. This initiative interlaces intricately with our academic plan, which sees every Oakhead University student engaged in some kind of experiential learning over the course of their career, whether in an internship or service learning, ensuring that the skills that they learn at Oakhead University are relevant to the 21st century. And those learners will be connected with Oakhead University through mobile systems and support. By amplifying the curatorial role of our institution, we're responding to the need for expression, experience, and meaning-making. The willful, that's just a shot of what the floor plans look like. The willful engineering of regenerative innovation zones remains a valuable strategy. In Montreal, the ETS McGill partnership will create the Quartier d'Innovation, ordered roughly by Guy, McGill, and Wellington Streets, and with the slogan, Live, Learn, and Work, is designed to bring together high-caliber researchers and creative entrepreneurs, including their cultural industries, design, and IT sectors. This is an innovation hub with over $1 billion of investment from Quebec, Canada, and the City of Montreal. The goal is a living laboratory where science and technology are visible to the larger public. We have similar ambitions with George Brown College and the Toronto waterfront. Art and design are fundamental tools for innovation and economic development. Economic development and should be foregrounded, not sidelined. The Montreal Initiative segues into another link between post-secondary education and the larger community, the recent phenomenal emergence of incubators and accelerators in urban centers. A return of the repressed from the 1990s, but now with wider definitions of disciplines and lower thresholds of entry than in the past. Universities and colleges are playing a major role in these transitional opportunities for students. And if we think again about the scenarios, these zones fit commercial world and globeland, providing connections for students in relationship to local and global capital. They also align with the demands for exchange and integration. So the digital media zone at Ryerson is an example. Our Imagination Catalyst focus on design, digital media, and art-based entrepreneurship is another, where we bring together talent development focused on supporting and elevating the entrepreneurial visions of our students, alumni, and faculty. And very quickly, just want to show you some examples of some of the projects that have graduated successfully from our Imagination Catalyst. So the Life Bike by Henry Chang, which is a motorized two-wheeler whose name spells out its attributes: lightweight, intelligent, flexible, and electric. It just won multiple awards and has capital investment. Helix, an innovation by Mandred Tabrizi, a therapeutic technology to innovate the process of healing broken limbs. A fetus modeling system by Francis Le Boutellier, our chair of sculpture and installation. And SOMO, a wearable sound environment for artistic and dance experimentation by Loretta Favrivi, Kate Hartman, and Maria O'Mahoon. We're also working with Artscape as they develop and roll out an arts incubator at the Toronto waterfront. The Centre for Creative Sector Entrepreneurship will be a creative and cultural hub in the heart of Toronto's downtown. It will support the entrepreneurial capacity and business skills of artists, creative professionals, organizations, and small creative businesses. The Creative City of the Future will host a network of support centers for creative startups. So conveners and curators of expression and the demand for experience. So our foresight work, as I mentioned, underscored the importance of convening and curating expression. And few projects have attempted this at the scale of Scotia and Nuit Blanche in Toronto, where I have the privilege of being the chair of the advisory committee. These events speak to the amplified hunger for spectacle and physical engagement in the digital age, where scale may be of crucial importance for impact. Excuse me. Graham Evans, writing in 2012 in the Tourism Journal in Hold Back the Night, says, Nuit Blanche and all-night events in capital cities are managed late-night events and large-scale celebrations that are becoming part of the competitive edge that cities are using in order to attract tourists on one hand and manage and direct youth experiences towards productive and immersive experiences. And the city of Toronto is revisioned through the lens of visual and performance art with its young audience as well as traditional art goers. And there may be a fecundity that fertilizes future art-friendly goers through these events. The event bridges physical spaces with the online movement of masses of people through its experiences. And the self-organizing quality of Nuit Blanche is remarkable. While organizers provide didactic information, signage, and route maps, the event is driven by serendipity. And chance walking down the street as well as social media. Last year there were over 15,000 Twitter postings and images that were available on Foursquare, Facebook, YouTube, and BlackBerry Messenger. What is left behind is a virtual mapping of affect and emotion that resides as memory and trace, another layer in the history of the city. And you can see the kind of history of growth of Scotiabank, Nuit Blanche, and the kind of support that has been so critical from the City of Toronto. It could not exist successfully if the city did not provide open access to its resources and an incredible staff who support this event. There's just under $2 million in cash revenues and sponsorships and public grants, which are about 73% of the event's cash operating budget. And just some images from Museum for the End of the World, curated by Janine Marchessault, who I believe is speaking later on in the conference, and Michael Procopo. Above ground at City Hall, on the square in City Hall, and in the vast parking garage. It was incredibly successful as an event. Just some images from a very powerful set of installations. And then This was on the streets in the financial district, and another one in the finance district, very gorgeous installation piece. And finally, Fog in Toronto, number 71624, a site-specific fog installation by Fujiko Nakaya from Tokyo, Japan, and Philosopher's Walk at U of T, and this may actually be the all-time favorite of all Nuit Blanche events. So some Toronto-Montreal competition may have infused the Nuit Blanche launch in 2006 in Toronto, inspired by Paris and Montreal, and indeed other cities have come on stream, Calgary recently, and Ottawa, and Gatineau. And it's received with very mixed reviews by its participants, from disappointment to ecstasy. Siobhan O'Flynn, writing for Public, in an article entitled Nuit Blanche and Transformational Publics, argued, I quote, "The mass mobilization of these diverse publics is remarkable, as arguably the common bond constituting these emergent publics is a desire to see and experience a city transformed by art. The expressions of disappointment and dissatisfaction are as valuable an indicator of the high degree of hope for something singular, transformative, and immersive as are the responses signaling enjoyment, pleasure, and satisfaction." Unquote. And Flynn further notes that Nuit Blanche's transformational spaces are simultaneously unfamiliar and often magical, while remaining emphatically here. This duality opens opportunities for new, unexpected modes of engagement with familiar places as spaces of play, performance, and interaction, she says. I agree in part with her, but the population that explores Nuit Blanche comes from all over Toronto, from its suburbs and the 905 districts, and in fact now from all over the world. And hence there is no familiarity with these spaces, except for maybe the club district. And rather, it is a strength of Scotiabank Nuit Blanche that it functions as a means to make the downtown accessible and magic, and retains the magical draw of urbanity, while highly and completely networked in the online space. So I want to move on here to the virtual city and visual analytics, a 21st century curatorial medium. So tools that form, manage, and imagine the creative cities are those of visual analytics. And analytics is the extraction, analysis, and representation of data to support decision-making. I'm co-principal investigator of the Center for Information Visualization and Data-Driven Design. And this is an area that I'm fascinated by, as its power just absolutely accelerates in our contemporary world. So visualization draws on skills of designers and artists and digital media makers as much as computational science. And visual analytics is increasingly critical as every component of the city produces huge quantities of data. And these skills should be and are increasingly mobilized at every level of urban infrastructure, planning, and experience. We can think of the city as an invisible grid made up of networks, packets, and data, surveillance technologies, interactions, connected devices, mobile internet, applications and their devices, energy and carbon consumption, and open data as a base of understanding the city. And open data policies allow academics, developers, and citizens to build visualizations on top of data and better understand and participate in city governance. This is essential, and for cultural planners, engagement in the process of building open media repositories and looking at data as a vast and exciting resource for your planning processes is absolutely sine qua non important. Mobility and the demand for expression. I want to share some thoughts on mobility, which are another set of urban and cultural transformation tools, and then I'll come back briefly to visual analytics in the mobile context. I recently authored a report, Taking Ontario Mobile, and available at www.takingontariomobile.ca. My co-author was Dr. Vera Roberts. And it's a comprehensive diagnostic about the transformative impacts and potentials of mobility, which is really about the individual, not the device. The urban experience of ubiquitous connectivity, personalized and context-aware services and content links us to our daily lives and interests, regardless of time and place. It's an incredible set of tools for cultural planning. It provides the means for continual discovery and enhancement. And mobile devices are both one of the most significant sources of data in the city and a means to navigate and engage with data from other sources. This image is created by Asaf Biederman, Mauro Martini, Carlo Rata, and Andrea Vaccari. And you can find it at MIT Edu. And it shows the city as the emotional flow of the presidential inauguration in Washington, D.C., analyzing the number of mobile phone calls made in Washington on Inauguration Day and the home state of country of phone origin. You can see the peaks of call activity as the crowd anticipates the presidential oath, a drop in call activity as the crowd listens to his address, and then peaks again as the crowd celebrates the inauguration. The city joins the mobile cell data with a map of Washington to produce the visualization. I want to quickly, and this is really a snapshot, and I don't have time to drill into this. By the way, I'm going to make sure my slides are available in my talk for all of you, so if you want to reflect back on it, you can do that. But mobility provides this amazing set of tools for municipalities, and I think in the 21st century, we actually look to municipal government as the place where we can actually engage and have a say. As that becomes more and more difficult at the provincial and federal levels. And that is particularly true with the sense we have about our cities and our cultural relationships to our cities. So incredibly powerful tools for and learning as well, transformational, impacting our institutions, providing the opportunity to really support lifelong learning in so many ways and shifting to both very focused individual learning opportunities as well as collaboration, taking the classroom and the studio out into the streets and having the same potential impact on galleries and cultural institutions. M-Health, which is very important as we move from acute care into the community and the home, and again providing amazing opportunities for transformation there. And mobile commerce, which allows us to really understand the environment around us, compare as we price shop, etc. But my interest is very much in mobile culture, which really comprises of cultural experience that can be created within the virtual city, such as Murmur, guides for tourists to attract tourism, and learning extensions of cultural organizations and institutions, augmented reality experiences created by cultural entities and artists, extensions of traditional entertainment offerings, and games that attract multiple generations of mobile users, location-based attraction marketing. And essentially, mobility and visualization come together in projects that really, bring together data sources and the ability to manage these through our mobile devices and experiences. This is a great project, Hero Reports, which crowdsources residents' reports of moments when others make a difference. Small acts of kindness, giving up a seat for a pregnant woman, holding the door for another, the hero who picks up a fallen child, and a bystander who helps in a car accident. And interestingly, cities linked into Hero Reports are Tijuana, Monterrey, Juarez, all in Mexico, and Kazakhstan, not really North America. So some of the urban visualization themes that we can imagine from mobile data. So everything from civic engagement to demographics, charting emotions, energy consumption, public services, quality of life, and just a few other really great visualizations of mobile traffic. This is the City of Light in Barcelona, which looks at a kind of bird's eye view of Barcelona's areas using both traffic that charts people's Wi-Fi paths through the city and their use of their mobile devices, giving a very, very different vision of Barcelona as a city. Visible Amsterdam, which shows the city in real time as seen by mobile phone traffic. And all of these give us a sense of our audiences and their patterns and how we can potentially engage with them. And City Sourced, which is just an activist tool for people who live in Hayward, California, in order to empower the residents to identify issues that they want to engage with. So I'm going to end. I'm close to my time. I've got about 4 minutes left, so this should be perfect. So our focus is very much on global citizenship and engagement as a university, and our engagement in the city. But this is balanced by a very strong commitment to acknowledging diversity at home, and in particular, a commitment to Indigenous people in Canada, their cultures and their rights. We're located on Mississauga lands, close to Ojibwe, Anishinaabe territory, and Six Nations. Our Ocad University Indigenous Visual Culture program is rooted in contemporary practice theory and expression in First Nations, Métis, and Inuit art, media, and design in Canadian and international context. And it's very much a program that links digital tools and ways of creating with physical expression. In this sense, it's a bridge between legacy island and our understanding of globeland at its most dynamic. And its core is the concept of storytelling or narrative. Unusual for a university, the program is based on principles of self-government, and it has a very powerful Aboriginal Educational Council with 26 highly engaged Aboriginal leaders from very diverse cultural and vocational backgrounds, including documentary filmmaker Alanisa Bomsawan, curator Leanne Martin, art administrator Tom Hill, architect Douglas Cardinal, storyteller Louise Profit LeBlanc, and media artist Zacharias Canuck. Other principles of self-government are the integration of Aboriginal perspectives into course syllabi throughout the university and the placement of Indigenous faculty in studios and classrooms to teach both Indigenous and other curricula. I think most importantly for this discussion, the program undertakes outreach programming in collaboration with school boards, Aboriginal associations, tribal band councils, and Métis councils. The program explores ways that art practice and exhibition can be tied to community. It is interlaced with Toronto-based and regional Indigenous organizations, seeking the balance of protocol, definitions of the work as subversive or inclusive, as Candace Hopkins describes that divide, and the sense that Aboriginal art must always have a fundamental community-shaping role, as Vincent Collegian says. Hosted by the Aboriginal Visual Culture Program in partnership with the Aboriginal Curatorial Collective, we held Revisioning the Indians of Canada Pavilion 1967 and its continuing impact on Indigenous art and cultural production. Indigenous colleagues describe this as a time, I'll just show you that event. So there were over 200 participants from across Canada and around the world, and it really looked at what the future should be of Indigenous representation in galleries based on a complex past. Indigenous colleagues describe this as a time of cultural renaissance, despite the challenges over their rights and the legacy of colonialism that Aboriginal, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people continue to encounter. The engagement with Indigenous culture needs to be omnipresent. It's a means to recall and center on our relationship to place. So the creative city of the future will address the instrumentality of cultural knowledge, be rich with resistance and experimentation, meet demands of different audiences and their relationships to culture. It will be highly participatory. It will shape technological change, in particular data and mobility. It will establish new economies, whether these be barter or crowdsourcing. It will embrace diversity. It will use curation as principle. It will allow for aging gracefully, bringing together older people with our youth. It will thrive on diversity. It will be fully accessible. It will be nimble. And it will respond to audiences who live in mobile, networked, and collaborative ways. It will mobilize relationships of mutual benefit. It will be porous between our institutions and public spaces, both physical and virtual. It will trumpet a robust transdisciplinarity, and it will hit the notes of diversity, global engagement, and the Indigenous local. We need to treat the practice of cultural policy creation as a form of participatory action research. Participatory action research, or collaborative inquiry, moves beyond simply embedding the researcher or the researcher's observation when it proposes that researchers treat their subjects as their equal. In this view, according to Bray et al., action researchers are radical ethnographers who perceive themselves as interveners, working lockstep with the communities they are researching and empowering them. And Reason and Bradbury add, quote, "The focus of research is to understand the process and effects of deliberate intervention to produce social change." My sense is that cultural planners are indeed researchers in the field who encounter the great challenges of the era. And the tools of strategic foresight, transdisciplinarity, inclusive design, reciprocal exchange, curation, visual analytics, mobility, and Indigenous knowledge will be meaningful methods to engage as we dream about the possibilities of the future creative city.